What is the maze in Westworld Season 1? The man in black spends most of the season seeking it, and Dolores seems to be connected to it in some way. But what actually is it? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to Deep Geek. This video is brought to you with the support of my brilliant Patreon community. Please do check out the link to my Patreon page if you're interested in joining up for some exclusive audio content. And do consider subscribing here if you enjoy the video. This video, needless to say, contains spoilers for the entire first season of Westworld. If you don't want to know what happens, this is your chance to click away. We see the recurring motif of the maze throughout the first season of Westworld, and we see it in a lot of different places. On a tarot card, on a branding iron, in a field, drawn onto the ground, on a coffin, on a tabletop, as a child's toy, and even on the inside of a scalp. It's clearly important, but what is it, and why is it so ubiquitous? Like most things in Season 1, this is all a bit confused by the overlapping timelines. When we see Dolores finally reach the White Church in Episode 9, we see it happening concurrently on 3 different timelines, for example, 35 years apart. But let's start at the beginning. Way back when Westworld was still just an idea being worked on by Ford and Arnold. Arnold's son had a toy, a marble maze which he loved, and after he died it took on a great significance for Arnold. He kept the toy with him as a reminder of his son. In his grief, Arnold threw his energies into his work developing Westworld as a park, and particularly in developing self-realization in the hosts. He became obsessed with wanting them to understand themselves and develop their free will. In particular, he became obsessed with helping Dolores on her path to self-realization. He took to having secret meetings with her to help coach her towards this. The meetings we see between Dolores and Bernard, dotted throughout the first few episodes, are actually between Dolores and Arnold from many years ago. To start with, these meetings didn't go very well. Arnold had the idea that Dolores' journey to gaining consciousness would be something like a pyramid, that she learns one thing, then building on that another thing, then building on that another, until finally she reaches the top and becomes fully self-aware. But this didn't work, because the way she had been built meant that every time she tried and failed, she didn't learn from the failure. She just reset herself and had to start again from the bottom. So he tried a different approach. He instead viewed the attainment of self-consciousness as being like a maze, a journey into yourself. The idea was that he would create for her within the park a series of experiences and force her to make decisions that would help her down this path. In true Westworld style, we don't know exactly which experiences or decisions she had to face as part of the maze, or indeed the extent to which they changed from time to time, but we can see from the action in Season 1 that this was about her being faced with the memories of her previous lives, and making decisions to break free from her scripted persona as a sweet farmer's daughter. In fact, the exact kind of things that you might expect to help set her free from her programming and make decisions of her own volition. And we know that the end of the maze was the White Church that Dolores was programmed to be drawn to, and the chair in the confessional booth that led her to a meeting with Arnold. And then finally, it led to her false grave in the churchyard, inside which was buried Arnold's son's toy. This was symbolic of both the fact that she was becoming like a child to him, and also, as it was her grave, that she must leave behind, or bury, the old, pre-programmed sweet Dolores Abernathy in order to achieve her full consciousness. So, that is what the maze was. Not a physical maze, but a set of experiences and decision points that Arnold left throughout the park, requiring empathy and imagination to help Dolores achieve self-realization. Which, of course, leads us to the inevitable conclusion that the maze failed Arnold. Dolores did not achieve the full self-consciousness that he so dearly wanted her to through this. When she went on the rampage as Wyatt and killed Arnold, it was because he had programmed her to, not because that was her own decision to. Dolores' eventual achievement of self-realization, if indeed she in fact did achieve this, but that's a subject for another video, was as a result of Ford reintroducing the reveries into her programming, giving her more years of experience and suffering to access and learn from, and his heavy coaching of her at the very end that the divine voice comes from inside her own mind, not from God. But where does the Man in Black come in? Well, again, let's go back to the beginning. He has spent 30 years exploring the park, doing almost every storyline, meeting almost every character he could find, and in that time he started to hear of the maze, because it's dotted around the park, and because Ford never really got rid of it. He left it there for Dolores to travel through again later. And seeing only these random hidden hints and clues, the Man in Black eventually came to the conclusion that the maze must be the final level, the deepest secret of the park that Arnold left for only the most dedicated guests. The Man in Black was, at this time, going through a kind of personal crisis himself. His wife had committed suicide, and his daughter run away, and his only escape, or search for meaning, was in Westworld. And increasingly he became focused completely on discovering and solving the maze. This focus perhaps explains why he can so determinedly ignore all of the warnings from hosts and Ford himself that the maze isn't for him. They mean it quite literally, but he sees it as just another obstacle preventing him from finding what he wants. So, almost everything we see the Man in Black do in Season 1 is him trying to solve the maze. He scalps a Native American host to find the image of the maze, captures Lawrence and kills his family until he gets the information he wants from them, performs a jailbreak for Armistice so she tells him about Wyatt, kidnaps Teddy to take him to Wyatt, and so on. Now, we shouldn't assume that the Man in Black's approach to solving the maze is actually what Dolores was expected to do. It wasn't. The point was for Dolores to face experiences and make decisions, not just go through a preset series of hoops where she had to make the right decision each time in order to reach the end. Nevertheless, each by their own way, Dolores and the Man in Black find themselves in the White Church in Episode 9, and in the season finale dig up the original maze, Arnold's son's toy, which leaves the Man in Black in particular dissatisfied. This is understandable because it did not provide the meaning or sense of purpose that he had been seeking. He thought the point of the maze was to get to the end, but actually it was the journeying itself that was the purpose. And it wasn't for someone who already had achieved self-realization. But of course, Westworld operates on many levels, and it could be argued that the maze did provide the answer the Man in Black wanted. He found the end of the maze at the same time that Dolores finally completed it, and given how many of her intense memories and experiences were connected to him, it's not too far-fetched to say that she completed it partly because of him. She became self-aware partly because of the good and evil he had done in her life. And that change in her led to the host uprising at the end of episode 10 with, for the first time, real danger of loss of life for the Man in Black. And this, as we see from the half-smile when he feels the pain of a gunshot wound, is what he needs to feel human again. So, Dolores' completion of the maze actually did make both of them feel alive, feel human almost. But what do you think? Are there even more layers to the maze? Let me know in the comments below. As I said, please do check out my Patreon page, and don't forget to subscribe here if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. That's all for this time. I'll see you again soon.